let's talk about the demonization of male sexuality. So this is one of the few videos I've actually recorded twice. It's such a sensitive subject. I looked at the first video I recorded and I went, doesn't quite hit the nail on the head. And it's a very, very dangerous topic to be talking about. I discussed it with my wife last night. And I've also just got laid right now. So, the experiential side, research just for you guys. So, where to begin? So the regressive left tends to demonize male sexuality generally, and active male sexuality in particular. We could say that the left was a more feminized culture, and that it tends to look at care over justice or truth in terms of the kind of universal virtues that might be considered. So that's hardly surprising that it tends to take some of the most male behaviors, as it were, and make them bad and wrong more generally, and in particular sexually. The view is certainly from radical feminists, if explicitly or implicitly, men are bad. The patriarchy oppresses us, which is supposed to just mean a few men, but it kind of really is used to mean all men, isn't it? And where that comes into is that men are bad, and therefore men have to be very apologetic if you're on that side of things. Luckily, if you're on the newer old conservative side of things, you can be like, well, actually, I'm not going to apologise for being a man. Active sexuality is one in particular that's targeted. Why? Well, let's first of all be fair. Let's be absolutely fair. So there is rape in the world. It's a horrible, awful thing. I believe that anyone who any decent human being would regard that as absolutely abhorrent and one of the worst things a human being can do to another human being, male, female, whatever the circumstances. So can we all agree on that? That's the kind of established thing here. I don't, it's almost like I almost resent having to say that because it's so obvious, right? So when we say active male sexuality, we're not talking about a sexuality which doesn't abide by the basic rule of consent. So actually I would say, consent is a very conservative principle in that it's about individual choice. Conservatives tend not to like it if people stealing their property, taxing them, whatever it is. Consent is absolutely vital to ethics. The difference between making love and rape, obviously, is mutual informed consent. So we're not talking about that. I think we can all get behind disliking the abhorrent sex without consent in any other forms it comes. Now, the research shows that men tend to rape more than women, though it's very, very hard to get a grip on this because it's so taboo. I think there's some biological reasons, obviously, in terms of this, why that might be the case. However, there is certainly not the degree of rape that some radical feminists would say. Though what I would agree on my feminist friends with is the low-level harassment and lack of respect for boundaries that the average woman in the world suffers from is really frequent and unpleasant. It's just, listening to all my female friends, it's just so common that, when was the first time you were groped was a question I asked a group of female friends, and they were like 12, 13. I was just like, oh my God. And, if I asked my male friends that, yeah, some of them have been groped by, other men. Some of them have been groped by women. I certainly had unpleasant experiences like that when my boundaries haven't been respected by women. However, it does seem to be far less common for, I would guess, kind of mostly cultural reasons, perhaps biological reasons too. So I think we do need to acknowledge that there is a triggering around this. I don't use that word lightly, around issues of sort of not respecting consent. So without in any way victim blaming, I want to be very careful. I would never blame a rape victim. The person most responsible, or well, fully responsible for a rape in every case is the perpetrator. And we can also say that women, again, I'm fairly feminist about this, are taught not to say no. Yeah, are taught to be compliant. My wife was talking to me about this earlier, yesterday actually, saying how conditioned she was. She thinks it's biological, I'm not sure. In terms of being not saying no, and the default sort of being to go along with things. Yeah. So that can create a very dangerous situation as well. And I think there is a degree in which, for example, I've asked people out and they've said, oh, I'm not sure. And then I've asked them out again, like a bit later. And then I've got a text from their friend saying, why are you harassing my friend? I'm like, well, I asked them out. And they said they weren't sure. So I asked them again. And is that okay? So that can lead to a tricky situation for men. What I would love more empathy from women is the situation men all around the world, in every country, pretty much. It's a little bit the exception in Israel, where women have done the army, a little bit the section in Australia, where women, it's a very yang culture, and a little bit in Sweden and Holland, was a very strong feminist tradition. But almost all around the world, and even in those countries, pretty much, men escalate sexually. Now, the reason they do that is because if they didn't, nothing would happen. Yeah, women do not do this. Women consistently do not do this. Even feminist, educated ones. I've talked to my friends about this. I said, how many times do you ask a guy out? And women under 30, almost none of them. Women over 30, a little bit more, as their sort of what we could call unpleasantly sexual value has gone down a little bit in society. Do it a little bit more, but generally it's very, very rare. So an example of escalation is saying, will you go out with me? Expressing sexual intent in some way, which is very dangerous in the modern world. You know, people get sued, people get offended. I saw someone, you know, trying to take down a friend of mine online the other day, and it's just like, he hadn't really done anything. He just expressed interest in her. He hadn't not respected a boundary. So men take an emotional risk every time they do this. In the same, Louis C.K. does a great piece of comedy on this. It's like every time a man, you know, a woman going on a date with a man is like a man going on a date with a mountain lion. It's dangerous physically for the woman. I acknowledge that. Yeah, we are generally bigger than you. The other hand, though, is also true that Louis says, which is that the emotional vulnerability of a man asking a woman out. And it's not just asking out. There's about 7 steps of escalation if you think from not talking to a girl, talking to her. That's sometimes the first one, you know, whether it's the office or whether it's the street or whatever, the nightclub. Expressing sexual extent, that might just be like, I like you, you look cute, yeah, whatever. It could be very respectful, like, you look beautiful, I'd like to take you out on a date. Yeah, and then, you know, the first kiss, inviting someone back to your place, sex, you know, marriage, all those things. You know, the amount of proposals done by women is still very, very, very small. So men are, I would say, biologically inclined to the active role. We could argue that. We could say it's societal, although it does seem to exist still in the countries that are sort of most feminist, like Sweden. And I hear my feminist friends complain all the time, saying, "Oh, there's no men asking me out." And, you know, why does no one approach me? And I'm like, I wonder, because perhaps you've made it dangerous for them to do that. Yeah. So the demonization of this is that any guy is now terrified, legally, you know, ethical, sort of more public shaming that can happen. Hilarious thing I did. I was in Israel on holiday with my wife, and I was on the beach. I did a fake pickup video. So I had a camera and I walked up to my wife who's sitting on the beach, right? She knows I'm there. I've been writing a book just elsewhere. And I went to see her and I was like, "Hey baby, how you doing?" And pretended to be like a sleazy pickup dude on the beach. And I put it on my Facebook and saying, you know, like, you know, saying, yeah, picking up girls on the beach. And obviously it's my wife, right? And she played along because she's fun and she knows the game, right? She's playing along with this. And it's like a 20-second clip. And Israeli feminists shared this, saying, "Look at this evil man. Everyone watch out for him. He's a terrible, terrible man trying to pick up girls on the beach." Like, first of all, even if it wasn't my wife, all I'd literally done is said hello. Yeah. Secondly, when I said to her, "Hey, you don't know me. It looks like you know a friend of a friend. That's why you've seen this on your thread. You don't know me, but this is actually my wife. So maybe you could, you know, say that. It's a joke. You might not get our humor." And instead of apologizing and taking the video down, she blocked me. And a friend said she kept it up to keep demonizing active male sexuality, even though she, you know, she'd been told this was a joke. And I tagged my wife and, you know, Facebook, you know, Darren Walsh, Mark Walsh. It's obvious we're married. You know, it's on there. So, the demonization of active male sexuality, which makes this, I would say, natural, but certainly still necessary and required role for men to escalate, is absolutely demonized. And a lot of men are terrified to do this because of the consequence. I remember when I learned some kind of ethical pickup and I would talk to people in the street, how scared I was to do that. And I was actually pleasantly surprised that, you know, as long as you're polite and respectful, and I'd say, "Hey, how's it going? Just saw you. I thought you looked nice. I wanted to say hello. Do you mind stopping for a minute to talk to me?" So I was trying to get consent, right? I was trying to get consent to have the conversation. I was amazed how good the responses were. The vast majority of the responses was good, but occasionally you'd have a response so bad that someone would just freak out and be like, "Why are you talking to me?" or be scared. And I'm like, "I don't want to scare anyone." You know, it didn't matter how respectful you were, I'd still get those responses. And generally, though, the response was very positive, and that actually surprised me because of the sort of cultural demonization of active male sexuality that's there. The other thing that surprised me is I talk to girls and they'll be very pleasant, and then they give me their phone number, and I go, "Oh, great, okay, maybe I'm going to have a coffee with them another time or whatever." And I'd say about 50% of the people that gave me their number never texted me back, and I was like, "Okay, what's going on with that?" You know, they seemed to be interested at the time. They, you know, expressed interest. And I thought, oh, they were just trying to get rid of me and they didn't want to say no. And I actually looked this up and it turns out it's called flaking, number flaking. And it's super, super common phenomenon for people that are into this kind of pickup scene. It's really, really common. It's a way of, and female friends said, "Yeah, you know, I sometimes do that just to get rid of a guy." And I'm like, wow, so you weren't actually expressing a clear boundary, which I would have been okay with. And I get, you know, perhaps women have had bad experiences themselves. I'm not unsympathetic to this. But what all this leads to, certainly, is a situation where Consent is perhaps not done very well by many men, but is also perhaps not done very well by many women, and perhaps through fear, perhaps for good reason. In case you're hearing kind of victim blaming here, that's not what I'm saying. Tired to keep having putting these in. I think it's obvious we all, think rape is abhorrent. But the demonization of active male sexuality, almost all male sexuality, has got to a point where, even my female feminist friends are complaining about the lack of kind of men talking to them. And, I've had a friend of mine, name her now, I should call her Miss P, feminist, smart, successful person. She's in New York, and she said men do it more there. I think it's kind of an Italian culture maybe that's left over in New York, and she really liked it. As long as it's respectful, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, that's interesting to know. And I know as a guy, I took a lot of this on, and I would took on the sort of sex shaming of active male sexuality on, and would feel guilty for saying, I'm interested in you. Yeah, to expressing interest, which is necessary if the human race is going to go forward, unless women start escalating themselves, which they don't seem to want to, because it's hard work and scary. It's terrifying. Get rejected. Women aren't used to rejection in the same way men are. We get used to rejection as a man. It's a very different experience. Yeah, most women have never empathized with this. Even my kind of smart, empathic female friends having the terrifying, the difficulty it takes to talk to someone, in a bar or a club or whatever. Anyway, so it does seem like this is being demonized, and many men take this on. They take it on personally and then demonize their own sexuality. So I would feel guilty about being horny. And it's, that's really taken some work. And I think for the guys, the exercises here are obviously respecting consent, asking, permission for different things. I think that's often non-verbal. It gets a bit weird if it's like, may I kiss you, often that's non-verbal sensitivity, I think, is part of this. And that's one of the things that I think dating can teach us men is this kind of sensitivity to others. It's how we can learn empathy, I think, in one of the best ways, because we're kind of motivated and we're tuning in. If you're a decent guy, you don't want to, upset anyone, and just for your ego, you don't want to kind of get the cheek if you're going for a kiss or whatever, yeah? So also looking at where you're making your sexuality bad. And I know I've done workshops on this. I've had men and women stand up in a room and say, I love cock or I love pussy, just really take it to like a visceral level, and actually say, biologically, that's just how we are. It's okay. It's okay. So I'd be interested to hear from gay people in the comments about, gay men, how this is for you. Is it something that's demonized in the gay world? I don't see that it is. I live in kind of the gay capital of England, and I don't see male sexuality demonized so much amongst gay men. So it'd be interesting to get your perspectives there, though. So might put in the comments, like, how do you demonize yourself? How do other people demonize you? How do we teach people good boundaries on sort of both sides of this? I hope that's useful. If you want more videos like this, like and subscribe.